So welcome to the Nashville Power BI user group, the February 2025 edition. And so glad to have all of you returning to us. And it looked like we had a lot of new faces as well on this month's meetup. So welcome. We are glad to have you. We got a full agenda today, lots of announcements and talking through what's new in Power BI, Fabric, Excel, Power Apps, all the Microsoft data stack and Power Platform. We'll make sure everybody has an opportunity to present any job opportunities coming up in just a moment. And then Nick Green is with us to talk about how he uses Power BI and his work to optimize health behavior change. So this is going to be a lot of fun today. I'm really looking forward to what Nick has to share with us. Let's dive on in. We do have a couple of future meetings on the books already, with a couple more that we're finalizing the details on as well. So next month for our March meetup, Jason Romans will be back with us talking about this new TMDL format. And of course, Jason comes up with the most creative and witty titles. He is a master at that, but really looking forward to seeing what he has to say about working with semantic models in TMDL. So come and join us next month. That meeting will be announced here and is available on Meetup for you to sign up. And in April, we've got Antone Christensen Galina, another Nashvilleian, joining us to talk about how data projects get derailed and then how you can avoid your project getting derailed. That will also be a virtual meeting, and we'll have that one posted very soon. So come and join us. Love to have you at all of our meetings. And as always, we're open to having you come and present to our group. Can be anything from within the Microsoft data stack. We typically focus in the analytics space, but anything relating to Power BI, DAX, Power Query, Fabric, Power Platform, how all of those things relate to one another. We love having all of those kinds of topics here at this group. If you are interested, feel free to reach out to myself. I'm Michael Hewitt, or Michael McKinley, or Sekou Tyler, or just new this week, we are actually now live on Sessionize. So if you visit sessionize.com/Nashville-Power-BI-user-group, you can actually submit your session via Sessionize. So any existing sessions that you have there, you could select to potentially share at one of our future group meetings, or if you want to create a new session for us, we're open to all of that. So feel free to pop on over there, submit your session, and we look forward to having you come and share about the cool stuff that you are doing and all of these neat and nerdy Microsoft data products. Want to highlight a few of the other data meetups around town and conferences that are within a day's drive of Nashville. And the next kind of data meetup in Nashville is the Nashville Data Nerds, Brilliant Women in Data. I believe this one meets about once a month. Their next meeting is February 25th. It's a 6 p.m. virtual meeting, and you can find more information about this one on their meetup page. Also in February, the Nashville Data Engineering Group will be meeting. This is an in-person meeting at Tech Hill Commons, the NTC campus. This one's from 5:30 to 7, and this talk looks like it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Ed Pearson, Kevin, and Nicholas are going to talk about Databricks versus Snowflake. So if you're into comparing those different platforms and understanding the pros and cons of each, I'm sure you will learn a lot from these guys, and that'll be a fun one to go to. You can also check out their meetup page for more information on this particular group meeting. Later on in February is the 2025 NTC Awards. So this recognizes all different types of technology contributions across the greater Nashville area, not just in the data space. but wanted to make you aware that this is going on. It's at 6 p.m. at the Country Music Hall of Fame downtown. It's not the cheapest event to attend. It's $275 for NTC members. There may be a non-member price, but I can't remember. But you can find out more on their website, technologycouncil.com, if you're interested in attending this award ceremony. February 27th and 28th, short drive over to Knoxville, is the Microsoft 365 Community Days. It's actually just outside of Knoxville in Friendsville. This one's going to be a $15 admission, or if you want to include a pre-con, $27.51. There's the URL on the Community Days site if you're interested in this one. So this one's going to focus on all different Microsoft 365 technologies. I did look, and it looks like there's a couple of Power BI and Fabric sessions in here, but there's also some stuff about administration and SharePoint and all the other tools that are available through 365. SQL Saturday Atlanta, the AI and BI edition, is coming March 7th and 8th. This one's fun, and actually I believe that, you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, but myself, Michael, and Sekou all have sessions that we're presenting at this one, so we'll all be there. This is always a great event. Lots of fun, lots of people from around the Atlanta area and surrounding communities. A lot of fun. It's $18 admission, will include lunch. There are still some room in the pre-con sessions available. There are 3 pre-cons with a good variety of topics. And I have to say, apart from not trying to shamelessly promote my session, but the schedule for the day is really good. There's a great variety of topics, and it's going to be a really good day. So check this one out. Drive on down to Atlanta and join us just outside of Atlanta and Alpharetta. We're really going to have a lot of fun that Saturday. The next Data Science Nashville meetup is March 17th. That's going to be a 6 p.m. start time, also at Tech Hill Commons. This one, they are talking about enhancing LLM applications with retrieval augmented generations. That's not exactly my wheelhouse, so I'm not going to lie to you. I have no idea what that's about. But if you're into data science, this is a fantastic group, and you'll want to check this one out and attend their meetup. We've also got AI Saturday in Houston. So this is a new one that we're seeing pop up. So it's part of the SQL Saturday Network. This is a $15 admission, March 22nd on this one. It looks like there's still some time to get registered for that. And I think this one I saw a partial schedule for, so you can check that out. Probably the big conference on everybody's radar right now is the Fabric Community Conference coming up at the end of March. Registration is still open for this, and it looks like there's a little bit of hotel space still available. This one's in Vegas at the MGM Grand. Again, not the cheapest thing to attend, but if you are diving at all into Fabric, you want to get pretty close with some of the Microsoft team and with other MVPs and people who are super smart around this technology, this is the conference to go to. There are also 3 potential days of workshops, both pre-con and post-con. So all different kinds of learning opportunities and ways to get involved with the community at this one. If you do go, say hey, because I will be there, and I would love to see you all there as well. A little further out still, we've got SQL Saturday Richmond. This is in Richmond, Virginia. This is actually going to be a free event, and more details are posted on their SQL Saturday site. Microsoft 365 Community Day is coming to Nashville as well. This one's going to be at Geodis Park on April 11th. Just under $20 for the admission on this. Yeah, all kinds of different topics. But I think I saw that Sekou and Michael are also presenting at this one. So it's going to be some data content in there as well. But this one should be a lot of fun. And the last announcement going on as far as community is that the first, what looks like it could be the first annual Power BI DataViz World Championships has just kicked off last Friday. So basically what's going on is there's a bunch of qualifying rounds right now. So anybody can participate. If you head to the URL here at the bottom of the screen, there's 4 qualifying rounds. So anybody can participate and flex their Power BI skills. There's some data sets on there for you to visualize in Power BI. And winners are going to be chosen through each rounds. And the top 4 winners are actually going to earn a spot in the grand finale at the Fabric Community Conference live in Vegas, basically to determine who is the winner of this particular world championship. So if you do want to participate, the week 1 challenge ends tomorrow. So you got to get started if you haven't already. And if you make it to one of those top 4 spots, you can actually win a conference package to go to the Fabric Community Conference. But I don't remember if that includes a hotel or not, but it at least includes your conference registration. Lots of cool stuff. If you end up participating and coming up with some cool things, win or not, we'd love to see it. All right. So that covers everything going on in and around Nashville over the next couple of months. So I want to take this moment to pause and open it up for anybody who either has a job opportunity to share that, or if you are looking for a new role, to share that as well. So feel free to drop your details in the chat or unmute yourself and let us know what you have available or what you are looking for.
So I have one company here in Nashville called Fusion Sites. They're looking for a analytics engineer. So they're looking for someone who is a bit of a utility knife, who knows SQL, but then also Power BI and Fabric and standard analytical engineering stuff. So if you're on the market for a job posting, let me know. I've done some work, I'm doing some work with them. Cool client. They're a good company. They're growing like crazy. So if you're looking for something, let me know and I can connect you to the right people.
All right. What's new this month, January 2025 release in Power BI? A couple things I'll highlight. It's one of those months where lots of cool things get released, but there's not necessarily lots of really cool demos. Perhaps we will have some cooler demos here in the future, but a couple things that I think are kind of small updates, but have a good user experience and good design updates to them are these enhancements to the text slicer. So you can now do multi option in that text slicer, and you can do like partial words. So if you're selecting, if you've got a state data field in your slicer and you want to select, say, Tennessee, you could type in TEN and it will pull up any states that start with TEN. That's a nice enhancement, as well as some enhancements to the tree map visual. So there's some new spacing options that you can put a little bit of a pad between each of the different squares or rectangles. And there's actually a couple of different options now to that you as the report author and designer have more control over how the visual is actually putting together those individual bits of the tree map into the full visual and into that full visual. That one's a lot of fun. Enjoy playing with that and making some cool tree maps with it. I'm also really digging, and I wish I had a demo environment set up in Fabric to show this. I was playing with it earlier, this live edit of semantic models in direct lake mode from Power BI Desktop, but this is a really nice update. Really looking forward to getting into this one some more, because if we go direct lake mode with our reporting, there is some potential time savers here in adjusting our semantic models as we're building out reports. Really looking forward to playing with that one some more. So in Fabric, the new updates, everything we just saw in Power BI, there is now folder support in Git. That's pretty cool. There's a new OneLake catalog that's including semantic model, table, and column descriptions. Continued work on just being able to help make sure that our data is well organized and well communicated across an organization. So really enjoying seeing how that is growing, and a lot of work being done right now into Fabric data warehouses. Won't go through all of those points point by point, but lots of really cool things happening in the data warehouse space. Databases continues to grow in Fabric, and also wanted to point out that if you are using the mirroring options within Fabric, CI/CD is now supported with that. And the copy job now has some simplified options and more connectors. So that's great to see that copy job growing. That's a particularly useful part of Fabric. It's going to be good to see that growing. And as well, not only does mirroring now have CI/CD support, but we've got that as well for data flows in Fabric. So lots of growth happening in this product, lots of innovation happening here. So excited for all of that. Couple of new things happening in Excel. There's a big focus right now on text analysis in Excel. So that's getting rolled out in Excel for Windows, Mac, and web. But I also thought it was interesting that they released a couple of new functions this month as well for the Windows and Mac version, where you can do translations in your text, or you can detect the language of a string now using an Excel function. So not only do we get all of the aggregations, all of the old functions that we're used to using in Excel now, there's a bit of an increase in focus here on being able to text analysis and continuing to dive deeper there. Couple of new updates. I think I mislabeled our slide here. This is a newer update than September 24. Some cool new things coming in the Power Apps space as well. Starting to see some more PostgreSQL popping up there, and lots of additional kind of options for developing low code and no code apps, and being able to partner that with other development work happening across your organization. And with that, we're going to turn it over to Nick and let him share with us about his work in Power BI and how he's using this in his daily work. So Nick, over to you.
First and foremost, thank you everybody for joining me on this lovely Thursday. I'm in Indianapolis. It's about 10 degrees here with some snow on the ground. I know it's probably cold down there in Nashville, but man, 'tis the season, right? But I'm thankful that I've had the opportunity here to share my work. So let's just dive into it. I couldn't find that sweet logo you had on your slide there, Michael, but I found the meetup icon, and I know this is a big group. Most importantly, big thank you. End of the week. I'm excited to share my work here. So in general, when I'm working with people on the health and fitness behavior change process, most of the time people say they want to have more energy, feel well, lead happy and productive lives. And over the years, I've learned that I come from a research background that when it comes down to on the behavior side of things, and we'll see this throughout some of the examples throughout that, at the end of the day, it really just comes down to like your personal preference, like what you like to do, what type of exercises you like, balancing that quality of life and quantity of life ideas, like, oh, we want to be as fit and healthy as long as we can to keep ourselves out of the nursing home. And much of what I'll talk about, and I'll describe just a little bit when it comes to thinking about health recommendations, is we know what we need to do, exercise 30 minutes a day, things like that. It's just really trying to offset those risks. So I bring that to the table when it comes to thinking about how I'm sharing my data with my clients and making decisions together. So when it comes to what do I want each of you to possibly get out of this, here's just a couple objectives that I'm going to share today of learning how I use as a heavy Power BI user, how I use it specifically in my practice. As a caveat to that, which I'll show here in a minute, we'll understand how I implement behavioral principles around the Power BI framework. And then at the end, I'll show a lot of different examples related to my work. But at the end of the day, we only have maybe 50, 60 minutes together here. If you can learn one or two things, that'll be great. Take home with you. Maybe one graph stands out over the other. If you can have some type of insight as it relates to maybe your own health and fitness ideas, or maybe some project that you could be working on soon. That's all I'm really searching for here today. All right, I have this presentation just broken up into 3 parts here. I'm going to talk about my background and how it relates to my behavioral approach. I'll get into my process of working with clients and using Power BI as a tool. And the fun part at the end will be many examples and different case studies. And I'll have a couple questions here sprinkled throughout. By all means, feel free to unmute and ask questions at anything along the way. A little bit about me. I'm probably a different, maybe a unicorn when it comes to thinking about behavior change in my background, but I've been in the clinical behavioral health industry since 2009, so over 15 years. My BehaviorFit company I founded when I was in grad school, so that's specifically working on health and fitness behavior change. And my school logos here, I got a PhD from the University of Florida down in Gainesville, living on the beach at Florida Tech was everything you could ever dream of, and I wish I was there right now. But my PhD is in behavior analysis, so it's applying the science of human behavior to how and why we do things. My master's is in OBM, or organizational behavior management, so applying those same principles to the workplace. So I really enjoy understanding how can we look at our work environment to help ourselves have a better day, right? Is it looking at different data visualization tools to drive some business decision? Is it looking at manager feedback on worker performance, looking at the entire system, things like that? And I'm a Boilermaker through and through from Indiana here. That's my academic training. When it comes to the subject matter expertise, when it comes to health and fitness, I've been training personally for a long time. I have a background in baseball and wrestling and cross country, golf, all the things. And I've sought out extra certifications through just different coaching and training programs when it comes to functional movement. And I don't know everybody else's background here, right? I'm new to the group, but for me, I found myself in an interesting Venn diagram of work here. So I have, like, in the blue circle, I have my OBM background, so I'm interested in the business side. I love health and fitness, that's the teal side. And then I bring the behavioral science piece together, and it kind of presents like a unique perspective I have, which then carries over to my Power BI work. And so when it comes to health and fitness and my background, what really qualifies me to talk about this area of expertise is I was fortunate enough to get a few articles out there peer reviewed. Specifically, my research interest was in reducing sitting in the workplace and getting office workers to move. So it really caters to a lot of our work as knowledge workers. And so more movement is good. And I've written an academic book chapter coming out. So that's just a little bit about I've had good opportunities to develop my expertise in these areas. And I have my own website, BehaviorFit.com. You can check out all the different work that I do. So I'm in kind of the behavioral healthcare field in general. So you'll see a lot of my health and fitness targets today, but I commonly will look at like software utilization, graduation rates, things like that. So what we're talking about now is we're setting the stage. Okay, thank you. So now I'm just going to scratch the surface a little bit on my behavioral approach, which I think will be foundational to seeing my charts and everything. So when it comes to learning and behavioral principles, this may be new or familiar to some of you, but I follow an operant learning framework, so learning by doing or by consequences. And so I think about how the environment sets up what we need to do from a health and fitness perspective related to the antecedents and consequences. So there's motivational variables, there are stimuli associated with some type of response, and then there's some type of outcome that follows that. So for example, if we're looking at fitness behaviors that I may be coaching somebody through, some type of stimulus could be, right? The gym is open, right? The gym is available for us to engage in some type of important behavior. The response we may engage in is going to the gym, lifting weights, getting on the treadmill, etc. And then some type of consequences that follow the behavior. So after we exercise and work out, what happens? The things I'll be interested in from a data perspective, right? Looking at strength gains, you get tired, or some type of social support. If you're in a group setting, if you're working with a trainer, you get coach's feedback, and overall you want to, right, improve your health. And then overall, the motivational variables that are always among us and ever present, right? All kinds of things happen. We go to the doctor, they recommend some type of exercise. A family member may make an inadvertent comment. Somebody breaks up, but now they're motivated to get in shape. You may learn about a new health recommendation, about some type of exercise or nutrition best practice, and maybe my presentation. Maybe this is a variable for you to think about your own activity. So just in general, one more slide here just on how we need to think about how we're graphing this stuff is, right? If we take a common behavior like walking, we want to think about, oh, what are the positive things that happen? We have some type of natural reinforcement. So you go outside, you see the sun, things are great. Or there could be some type of contrived reinforcers. If you're looking at your Fitbit or Apple Watch, right, these things are set up so you say, oh, if I meet my step goal, something happens, a ding goes off, what have you. And sometimes, right, we can't forget about, we may be exercising or walking, and there could be something that prevents us from doing it again in the future. So that could be some type of like punisher. You roll your ankle, or you go the wrong way down a path if you're walking, and that could maybe prevent you from doing it again in the future. Maybe nothing happens when you go walking, but overall, really it's about, when I'm coaching through people, and you see this through the data, is that how many learning opportunities does it take for somebody to experience this reinforcement such that they're doing it again and again? And that's always the goal. That's on the back end of behavior, but in the front end, we always hear, hey, maybe we need to take 10,000 steps to reach our fitness goals. But that's only kind of one half of the equation when we think about the work that we need to accomplish. So I might say technically the antecedent kind of sets us up to walk, and that's like a rule that we follow. But on the other side, that contingency, when reinforcers occur, that's the piece that matters the most when it comes to changing our behavior for all the health and fitness goals that we need to meet. But kind of beckons the question of, if all we need is information, then we'd all be fit, strong, healthy, doing 1,000 pull-ups and push-ups every day, nourished, drug-free, etc. So it's the consequences, the things that I look at through the data that are super important for the clients to be successful. Now, when it comes into getting through like my model, and you see this now, this is where the Power BI work starts to come in, is that I work with clients via telehealth, so Zoom, Google Meet. Typically, depending on the need of the client, I'll meet with them like a half an hour a week, maybe less, maybe every other week, depending on their goals. I work with regular adults. I've always done this, and I started this during grad school, and I established this kind of process prior to the pandemic. So I was pandemic ready once everybody started getting used to the Zoom life as we know it today. And then pointing out too, everything's private pay. So that's an important kind of contingency. Throughout the examples that you'll see later, there's all these active behavioral pieces, whether we're thinking about them or not, that all contribute to how successful we're going to be in the behavior change process. So there's always regular data collection that's super important for, right, the Power BI front. Self-monitoring is a big piece of it. There's prompting, feedback, goal setting, shaping, preference assessments, working with me, those pieces that are super important. That kind of sets the stage for the rest of what I'll be discussing now. Many moons ago, I'm not sure if anybody here can relate, but I was doing all of this work, and I found myself, I was once lost in the Excel gymnastics world, where I was formatting cells galore. I don't know if anybody here can relate. This was actually one of my first clients down in Florida, where she was a marathon runner. We need to look at the data, and that was my Power BI lens. I'm like, oh man, if I knew now what I knew, or if I knew then what I know now, I could have made this way easier. But this is where I started. I'm sure some other people can think about their own journey too, where it's, yeah, I was making these charts. You see some examples there, and it was just a lot of plug and chug manual work, right? This was back in 2016, 17. So I was getting to the data, it was just taking too long. So fortunately, I was working with, I had a colleague of mine. He introduced me to Power BI in 2020, and forever my life has changed for the better. And as soon as I saw those kind of key aspects of, for me, I don't know how someone else may describe this, but I had to start thinking in tables versus just individual cells and columns, and start organizing the data. And once I saw those magical pieces come together, and mind you, like with my background, I don't come from computer science. I'm a clinician first. And so I've upskilled or backfilled my skill set in this area. And you can see the examples that I have here, and I have others later too, that I was like, oh my gosh, I struck gold. And I was super thankful that it was a casual conversation. And, since that time in 2020, I mean, everybody here knows just the rocket ship of innovation that has happened in the 2 years of Power BI has been phenomenal. So it just only helps not only my professional interest, but really, I mean, it helps my clients too, because if I can get better at developing reports, that means I'm getting closer to the clinical work as well. When it comes to my technical journey, I think this is important too. I'm pretty basic and simple when it comes to the kind of my practical skill set. And graduate school, I was in that Excel world. I did some statistics for my research and what have you. I functioned as a business analyst for a couple of years, in which that was that aha moment of going from Excel to Power BI. And then I landed in a full-time role as a Power BI, a lead Power BI developer of the company I work for now. And so I was in a product owner role, and then now I'm on a data science team, but for multiple divisions, I'm the lead developer for the products that we make there. And throughout the whole journey with my BehaviorFit program, which you'll see here with the examples, that again, it was that Excel piece of just marathon data drudgery to Power BI. And then just to note here, in fall of 22, so I guess, wow, I can't believe it's been 2 years, that I joined the local Indianapolis Power BI group. And that's where somebody mentioned Jason will be presenting next week. He actually presented for us like last fall, and I got to meet him there. Real nice guy, great presenter. And so I've been a part of that group, which has been super helpful for me to learn and grow as a developer. And being a part of this group is awesome here. My work today, BehaviorFit's like my main passion, interest in working with health and fitness. That's a lot of one-on-one work. But on the left there, I work for a company called Rethink First. And I mainly serve the divisions of education tech, so K through 12, and then behavioral health or applied behavior analysis services. And I work on a lot of internal corporate reporting. And then, of course, like I'm sure a lot of us here, we have a lot of passion projects going on where I like to look at by industry metrics, some academic work. And then most recently, I saw some NFL concussion data that needs some reanalysis. So those are just some of the things that I work on here. All right, so now we're going to get into my general process for using the Power BI stack here in my workflow as a behavioral health clinician. So very basic here, very simple. I'll work with clients right through my assessment, pinpointing very specific here on some type of behavior or result they're looking for. So I want to exercise more, I want to do more pull-ups, I want to lose weight, or I want to improve my mile time or something like that over time. So we work on something specific. The client collects their data weekly with a spreadsheet. I build the dashboard, and then based on our cadence of working together, we'll start reviewing those data together. And that's a part of that behavior change process that's important for me as a practitioner. So a couple points on my process. So when we get those data together, is that each client is different. All of us are different. We got different goals, different targets, but we're actually going to build our data collection form together, which is the majority, 99% of the time, is going to be just a shared Google spreadsheet. I have my business work in Google Drive. And so this way, it allows me to be more precise with teaching my clients how to enter clean, structured data so that I know how to analyze it later. Because if I have good inputs, I have good outputs. So very basic there. So we're building the spreadsheet together. When it comes to the access, we're going to, oftentimes, sometimes clients will update data maybe like daily, or they may do it right before the call, or sometimes they do it right on the call with me, which is a good contingency as well. So I'll just refresh the dashboard live and do a screen share. So it's very rare. Sometimes I've dabbled with giving my clients access to a Power BI workspace, but they look at it a little bit. They're not hardcore Power BI users that we may be, but again, that kind of contingency is lifted. I'm not reviewing it with them together. So that really isn't a big part of how I share the data, but everything most of the time is just screen shared together. Sometimes if clients cancel, I'll just update some screenshots via email. I have a client tomorrow. We had a conflict. I said, we can't reschedule, but I said, okay, just enter your data, and then I'll give you a new screenshot of what your progress is and some notes on what we need to work on. And sometimes we have great projects, and I say, hey, let's just hang it on the refrigerator. It's always nice to celebrate those wins along the way. And then based on my current clinical model, as far as data access and them paying me for services, their access to the data ends when our contract is over. So there's no like them kind of owning any of the workspaces or dashboards afterwards, unless it was a super user that knew exactly what they're doing. I wouldn't have a problem sharing it. But most of the time, people aren't developers like we are. Ends there. I might share a PDF or a final clip, but yeah, that's usually how it ends. And then we live in a great time of technology, as we all know. And so most of the time, a lot of the data and KPIs that I'm tracking can all be captured by our Apple Watches, Fitbits, and just different Garmin devices. What's different about my approach with my behavioral lens on is that I'm looking for different things in the data set, and that's how you'll see a lot of my examples are set up that way. So the big piece for me procedurally is that I'm always going to rely on baseline, is that I want to know as a practitioner, is my recommendation or change or environmental work, is that actually having an impact? And so if you can see it here, this first phase is the baseline. So I want to know what happens without changing anything. What are we coming into right now? And then over time, we start to look at different phases. So I'm always comparing, like, here's the intervention phase to baseline. Am I doing a good job? And if I'm not, the data will show us. Also, with these types of visuals, it comes with the territory in working with Power BI, is that we're using our eyeballs to visually analyze different aspects of the data when it comes to looking at that line graph there. So always looking at more of a visual approach, as opposed to looking at more of like statistics and p-values and things like that. So you can see right away the step goals are generally trending up. The third piece when I'm looking at analyzing the data is I'm working with individuals like one-on-one. So each data path is like one client's behavior or outcome. So the example on the left is step goals, average per week. And the one on the right are total exercise minutes over time. And you can see here with that baseline logic, very few total minutes per week. But then as the intervention developed over time, a lot of minutes, right? We start to see different reference lines there that we can hang our hat on. Oh, that was responsible for the biggest change, right? Something happened here. We see that big shift and more exercise minutes. We can see that in the data. So one client, typically many measurements as opposed to just like a pre and post like group study. So you'll see that throughout. And the last point is that while I'm looking at the data, I'm also analyzing different contingencies. And you can kind of see that through the phases of the different colored lines here. Baseline was green. Goal 1 didn't do much. Goal 2 didn't do much. Goal 1B essentially, not much effect. Goal 2, a little bit of effect, improve some aspect of performance, but we had a recent dip here for whatever reason. The combination of these kind of perspectives on analysis sets us up for like how we need to continually iterate over the Power BI graphs. So you might have saw this slide I shared on LinkedIn and perhaps for this talk, but I kind of wear like two hats when it comes to looking at the data. So as a data analyst, I'm looking at the number of data points. Are they clean? The magnitude of change. Are they trending up, down, staying flat? What do we need to do differently? Then as a behavior analyst, behavior scientist, I'm thinking about what's the impact across all the behavioral phases. Are we doing a good job? Are these good relative to the client's goals? And then relative to health recommendations, how does the client feel about that? Because you may be making changes, say on step counts or minutes, but if it's not reaching like the minimum standard of 150 minutes per week, then maybe we're shaping towards that direction, but we need to do a little bit more. And so all of these hats and perspectives together, Power BI just lets me do that. So the next phase here, when it comes to how I use Power BI, is that kind of these are my strategies or tricks, if you will, that I use as a behavior analyst when looking at the data. So strategy, kind of numero uno, very simple data source, as you might have gathered through the earlier slides, is that I'm just using a basic flat Excel or a Google Drive spreadsheet. Very simple, use the connector. I'm not sure if anybody's had experience with the Google connectors in Power BI, but sometimes it got a little finicky. I did figure out a trick where I think I was getting the 429 error of too many requests. I lowered it to just like 1 or 2 at a time, and that seemed to help, but I kept getting all these too many requests here. I don't know if anybody else experienced that, but for the most part, this works no problem here. So a very simple spreadsheet. When it comes to building the semantic model, I keep it pretty simple. You can see here in this example, if it didn't date table, this is just one spreadsheet that has 3 different tabs on them, and those are the names of the tabs. Very simple, right? So when I'm building that spreadsheet, I try to think ahead. Because I know how I need the data structured, I can set up my client sheets the way that I need them to be. So anytime I say, okay, here's a new target. All right, do I need to add a new column to the fitness data tab? Or are we getting into biometrics and I need to make a body composition tab and the data are different? So now that I've gotten better at semantic modeling, I know how to quickly make those changes live on the call. So it's been an interesting way just to keep it simple there. So that's what most of my clients' models look like, very simple. You can see some parameter tables as well. But sometimes it gets a little wild where I've been experimenting a lot with my own dashboards and historical data. So I've accumulated a lot of different spreadsheets from different software platforms in the gym space. And each of these tables here, they're all different Excel files. Not every tool structures the data the same. So a lot of data cleaning has to occur. This might be the craziest I get with a health and fitness dashboard, but again, I'm the audience for it, so I know when things are going to work or not. Yeah, they can get a little wild sometimes. That's the basics on the semantic models. One strategy I like to use is grouping dates. And lo and behold, when I first opened up Power BI 5 years ago, nobody told me about dim date tables. I didn't know what those were. I didn't know how they worked. Only after through many trials of, oh, I need a date to go everywhere. We know how all those work. I was just grouping things in a quick, fast, and easy way where I discovered that you could take the date and group it by a week and use a 7-day bin size. And it takes care of what I needed. Again, looking at like the metric of exercise minutes per week. If I'm in a hurry, that's just a quick and easy trick that I've learned and still maintain. Just if I need a quick week view, I can do that. But when I do have time, I'll take the time to model everything with a table appropriately. So that's one trick that I found was grouping that piece. Related to grouping, as we've alluded to with that baseline idea earlier, is that I'll group, we have here the date on the intervention. So I know from the first 4 days of our work together, that was baseline. So I'll group those into baseline. Then the next goal 1 will be the next 5 days. So it is a pain to go through if you don't set it up to begin with, but towards the end, you can use that other bucket. So like whatever the last phase is of behavior change, then you just rename it to, in this case, goal number 2, and then you move on. And so what's neat but unpredictable is that you get different colors. I think in this example, different colors for the lines. This was just a template that I have for all of my client data, but sometimes if you don't have one in there and you have multiple interventions, the color paths seem to vary whenever you update the model. So sometimes the green will be black, the black will be red, and doesn't always follow a hierarchy. I'm sure maybe some of you have seen that in different legends or what have you. So I'll group the coaching changes there. So another, with that same idea of grouping interventions, that's on the behavior side. I'll also look at changes in technology. That is a significant environmental event that sometimes I think it's overlooked or undetected. Where in this case, I had a client going through a variety of different devices, and we all know the issues with data validity and reliability. Most devices nowadays, I think they measure everything pretty close to each other. They're all pretty similar, but sometimes if you get older models, you start to see some variability, and it's not a result of the person maybe performing less as it relates to their exercise, but maybe it's an artifact of the device. So here, the Samsung Galaxy Watch for this client was just measuring heart rate data on the y-axis there for this screenshot, but a lot of variability. But then as soon as that client bought a new Apple Watch, then it was more consistent. So then that allows me to make a better change there. So then I grouped those phases, kind of the purchase windows, and when they wore the device, we set up those dates with that phase. And that's one other example of that grouping by date. The next area, common, you've seen other charts here, just using reference lines. I tend to use these more for general goals. If we say, hey, we want to exercise 1 or 2 times a week, what does that look like? Or most commonly for health recommendations. So here you'll see MVPA, the total moderate vigorous physical activity minutes, is the CDC recommendation of at least 150 minutes per week. And so you can quickly see with a visual analysis, like how many weeks are above or below. So we see, hey, there was a bit of a dip from these weeks from March to May, but then we must have changed something that now we're getting more consistent results. That reference line, a great guideline for looking at health recommendations. One of the more recent advances in my own development is bringing parameter grouping into the client work here. So I have a little clip so you'll be able to see the different targets of total exercises, total days above 10K. So this individual wants to climb Mount Everest base camp. So we need to target many days above a certain threshold because he's going to be walking a lot in a couple of years. That's an important KPI, total steps and zone minutes. And then I have some groupings based on year, month, and date. So here's just an example of how I have that set up. So you see toggling from month to week. We also see the year, total 10K days. So here was interesting, particularly with this client. You see a gap in data. He actually had surgery. So he just couldn't walk or he wasn't allowed to walk or push himself. And so he had very few 10K days. Now he's on the mend and now he's doing a lot better. So we can see that in the data. So toggling between the KPI and then of course, whatever time dimension we want to look at there. I like to embed, some of us have probably been sitting for some time, a bit of a movement break for 30 to 60 seconds. I have a standing desk, so it relates to my research. So I can't see anybody, but if you can, just stand up and stretch, if you're able to, if you want to participate, move your arms, get up. We spend so much time in this position, hunched over, so we need to sometimes undo sitting, if you will. So that's like my personal public health announcement is that based on the research, I gave a whole presentation to my local indie BI group last month about this. Even if we exercise, which is important, we still need to move because too much sitting is an independent risk factor for preventable diseases, all the bad stuff, diabetes, obesity, cancer, all that stuff. So the more movement you can integrate into your day, so as much as you can throughout the day, breaking up the sitting pattern, super important. Now, for my targets, you've seen this throughout, common targets that I'm going to look at, step counts, right? We want to be active, in this case, average by week, with a legend on the year. With this client, this is the example I gave on an earlier slide. And you see actually split there because the week is 229. This captures the rest of the days in 24. And then this higher data point are the days beginning of the year. So what does that tell us? Was that maybe a New Year's resolution? Get moving maybe? So it's cool. You can see how the data separate like that. On the end of December days, that last week, lower step counts. Beginning of the year, 10K right out the gate, which was great to see. Step counts, very common, measured in my physical activity research and work. Exercise minutes, most of the time captured by the Apple Watch, because I'm not with an individual observing them in the gym or watching them breathe hard or exercising with them. Again, everybody's remote. So we'll look at those heart rate data with exercise minutes. And so in this example, we have the behavioral grouping of different lifestyle or life changes here. So if somebody moved, a couple phase, I call these phase change lines, these vertical dashed bars. Hey, there was some significant event that happened. Here, the second one, this individual traveled over Memorial Day weekend. So spent a lot of time in the car. Step counts are low. Good to know. Don't need to ding anybody on that, behaviorally speaking. And then you see that kind of horizontal reference line of, in this case, it wasn't a health recommendation. It was more of a goal of, it looks like 245 minutes was our target there. Exercise minutes, super common target. We start to see some variety and opportunities in how to design some dashboards. This was a fun one that actually made collaboratively. It's a little kind of gaudy to look at, but just stacked bar graph here with different types of exercises. In this case, blue is skiing. She lived in Colorado. Biking was Peloton, which was red, and then strength training is purple. And so we start to stack up, right, the amount of activities and what that distribution is visually. You can see right away, ski season open, but we couldn't get to the slopes. And then we went sporadically there with the blue bar. Type of exercise is always important for me to look at, because we want to know, okay, if we want to increase exercise time, we want to exercise more. What does it look like? Where do you spend your time and what's most important to you? Here's a different example. I had a fun way to look at it with just different emojis, just being creative here. You can see all of the activities over time in this time range. So you have dog walks, treadmill time, yoga, swimming, strength training program. In this case, that all of these different activities, like we started treadmill right here. That was great. Then we started a new activity. So the more we see like new and different colors and things, then the better off we are with knowing if our behavior change program is working. A next common target, miles ran for the runners out there. This weekly miles stacked up. This could be a line chart. In this example, I just use the bar chart, but using the data labels here so we can see quickly, oh no, what happened? No running here, right? Maybe we're sick or something else. Miles ran. Another common metric I'll be looking at will be weight. Super excited when the new KPI card visual came out. What was this, in like early fall last year? It has opened up all the opportunities to look at all the data in one area. So for those of us that use the KPI card, I use this one. So first weigh in, last weigh in with the details, I was able to edit that. But this was something I put together in a dashboard, and it really came out nice there. So using a KPI card on a dashboard, something unique that I also look at and analyze. Again, this is maybe a less common target for me, but something that's important for everybody else is sleep. So I was able to develop a metric, or I don't say metric, but just a visual here looking at bedtime and then wake up time. And you see them on the same graph. In this case, we all know using hours and minutes is not the most perfect, or it's not the easiest way to calculate in Power BI, but I ended up developing a way to convert the time into, if I remember this correctly, convert the time in the shared spreadsheet into a decimal, and then I would load that decimal into Power BI, and then I have to put it on a visual. And so what eventually happened was I looked at, this would be the hours. So then 0, we ended up coding this 0 is midnight. And then you have, this is 9:30 a.m. This is 10 a.m. So then you'll see, okay, we're going to bed late, midnight. Lower here means you're getting to bed earlier. So we have this window of, we want to fall asleep in this window, which was good because we're going to bed so late past midnight, and then we'd wake up later too. But then we eventually see, oh, now we're starting to wake up consistently in that 6:30 to 7 window. So you can see right away, highly variable wake up times associated with highly variable or late bedtimes. And then once we get the bedtime dialed in, we start to see improvements in wake up time. So this was a unique way to look at how that wake up time and bedtime go hand in hand. And you also see a few phase change there, the reference lines. And then also, again, just to repeat, the blue horizontal lines are those kind of intended windows, the target windows. Or target window here, this would be like the non-ideal window. And so you want to be below that. A nice creative way to look at those sleep data. I also may look at two KPIs together and see the difference over time. So I may look at exercise minutes and be more of a leading behavioral indicator. And how does that associate with a lagging indicator of resting heart rate? So resting heart rate typically in my work it takes, I'd say, about 6 to 8 weeks of consistent levels of exercise time before you start to see a lower heart rate. So a lower resting heart rate is associated with better health outcomes. And so we start to see when we have these higher exercise minutes, we see lower resting heart rate. And then we start to see lower exercise minutes, the green, the resting heart rate goes up. So in this case, this example of the client, it tended to go back and forth. Then when we increase the minutes again, the heart rate went back down. So it was interesting to see like how this cyclical pattern occurred when we looked at those minutes and heart rate together. Though that relationship, and then also those same kind of phase and reference lines there. Another example I've looked at, this is more of an infographic that I made related to heart rate, is your VO2 max. So VO2 max is just a kind of a rough measure of how well your body processes oxygen. So the higher the number, meaning you can process more oxygen longer, the better your cardiovascular fitness. And so we start to see when your number of cardio days increases, more time on the treadmill, more time on the elliptical or the stationary bike, then your VO2 max improves. So you see that again, that baseline of 29, and then improvements associated with increases in cardio days, improvements in the VO2 max, which is a nice outcome as well. Another example I have of an interaction effects would be looking at your calories consumed and weight loss. I think that's a pretty common way to look at that body composition change. So we have the green line here over time. We see the slow burn, slow weight loss. And then my client, these are her words, she said, I realized I kind of plateaued looking at the data, and she called it her coming to Jesus phase, in which she said, all right, I need to do something differently. She shared what that was. And so we start to see how the change in the calories consumption of what she logged, when that decreased, and we started to see weight loss again. We do note here, oh, we weren't losing weight because actually the calories increased. So we start to see, right, when we, in general, and this is not nutrition advice for anybody or looking at specific numbers, but we saw weight loss goes down with calorie consumption loss, or calories consumed decreasing as well. So common target there. I have a few more examples. Any questions on anything that I shared here? Any thoughts, comments, feedback? You can make fun of how ugly things are. You can say they are awesome. I wouldn't have done it that way, but here's a different idea. Any thoughts here before I go on to another round of just different examples and case studies?
Hey, Nick, well, I had a question about something.
Sure.
This is a bit philosophical, really, rather than BI, but
Yeah, I love it. Let's do it.
so some people might say focus less on the outcome and more on the inputs, because the input is what you can control. I can control that I go to the gym today. I
Sure.
can't control necessarily how much I'm going to weigh a week from now or a month from now. I can control like how much I eat.
Yeah.
And so, but we do it for that outcome, for
Mhm.
weight reduction or increased physical capability, etc.
Yeah.
And so I was just wondering, again, like just philosophically, how much emphasis do you put on one versus the other? You focus entirely on what is that input that we can actually control? Are you
Yeah.
split the difference? How do you think?
Sure. Yeah. No, great question. I love it. So if I have to pick one, I would definitely lean towards the immediate short-term behavior change that we're focused on today. Because you're right, there's so many things that go into all the ways that we're fit and healthy, right? We got genetics, environment, other things happening. So yes, that's something for me personally, right? We're looking at measuring something like we want to control or not control, but we want to improve whatever kind of short-term behavior change goal that we want to. Now, the second piece is, for the most part, when people come to me, the first meeting, they'll say, my question will be like, what is success to you in 6 months? So we have to pick a little something, maybe like a medium term goal. Like, I want to fit into my favorite dress again. I want to run a 5K without stopping, things like that, which is fine. So again, leaning on kind of the behavior change. But there always has to be a little something that we're, I think, working towards, with the caveat being that something that may be reinforcing and valuable the first time, the first 3 months, may not be important and valuable again. So then you have to like reassess what's important to you now. Like, what's the next thing? Like, does this make sense? Is philosophically speaking, is
So you're kind of saying like focus on some drivers, but reevaluate what drivers are actually having impact on the ultimate goal.
yeah, yep, that's it. Yeah. And we set up the behavior change going, great, I'm going to the gym, I'm doing this. And then eventually there has to be some, I think, conversation either with yourself or if you're working with a coach like me, of like, okay, if there's anything else additional that you want to keep track of, great. What is that? On the academic side, I tend to follow more of the general public health recommendations. It's okay, do you want to fall more on the health recommendations of, okay, we're going to the gym? One example would be like, hey, I'm going to the gym, but I'm only elevating my heart rate for 100 minutes each week. Well, if you want to meet that recommendation, we at least need to get to 150. And if you can maintain as just a general goal to work through the behavior change process, then I think that's good as well. But yeah, the challenge is, as a different example, I worked with a client on running for a long time, and we're like, okay, we work towards this, we work towards this. She made a running goal, she ran a 5K, 10K. We worked like a year together, and then she's, now I don't know what to do next. And so some people like need to have that target or competition or something to work in. That's always a challenge. But then I think on the flip side, what are the little things that you have to plant 1 month, 3 months, 6 months down the road to know that you're making some progress in general for your health?
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Yeah, it is tricky because even I'm thinking of my own kind of personal health and fitness journey of just like, yep, I'm showing up to the gym. I met my weightlifting goals that I set for myself 2 years ago. And it's like, all right, I guess I'm just maintaining. So now what do I need to do to keep my attendance high, keep my lifting up? And for me, I have a community of friends and people that I work out with that even on the days I don't feel like doing it, I know my friends will be there and they'll be able to provide reinforcing activity that's going to be a great to hang out with them. So no, great question. Great question. Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of philosophy and decision making when it comes to a lot of these things. It's always a balance of, I check in with the data, I show them this cool report, and it's just like, great. Now nothing matters. Now the dashboard doesn't even matter. It's just like, we did all this work, but now the important work is to say, okay, does measuring some target align with your next long-term vision, whether it's 6-12 months down the road? I think that's a great segue from that question to, here's an example of a client that I've actually been working with for over 3 years, more of a outcome study, if you will, but still working on maintenance mode, where I just made the visual like this just to fit on the slide. I wouldn't like look at it like this with a client, but I think it still works. You can see like over time, we have the years, the small multiples on this graph. Came to me, I want to strength train. Baseline said, we're not doing it very much. And slowly over time, over years of working through teaching him lifting, working on attendance, navigating those life changes. And now we're going to the gym and purposefully strength training with a dedicated program over 15 times a month. So he's going 3 to 4 days a week, where he was hardly going once a week. Seeing that in the data is really valuable for me to see. And then just now in retrospect, when you have this data set built up, is, oh, remember the time we were here? Remember last year, we were only half as busy as we were now. Really cool to see, like, long, again, one client, many measures with this type of data. I alluded to this earlier because I forgot where this slide was, but when we look at variety of exercises, this is also important, again, to think about what is that reinforcing activity that's going to keep people going. Particularly, again, with this client, I noticed she actually had a treadmill behind her. I was like, if you want to increase activity, that's a great tool behind you. I said, when's the last time you used it? She said, never. I said, great. Let's get it down and figure out how to set it up to make it happen for you. And so what's really neat to see, like, you have the availability of a treadmill here, but unless we start changing some contingencies, giving feedback, we don't see the green bars. We don't see those increases in treadmill time until we give that coaching feedback, then we see it on the dashboard. More and different colors are good in respect. You're starting to contact, I think, different reinforcers or valuable activities to really sample and say, oh, I do like this activity. Oh yeah. Or I do remember I like strength training. And now let's see if that happens again. Or, oh, I got into swimming again. I realized I didn't like it. I'm going to stop doing that. So you start to see these patterns really quickly on somebody's performance. The next one, I think, is a big kind of highlight win case study. Here we're starting to see, I think, maybe an evolution of my Power BI dashboarding skills of how I like to design things. So here, with one client, working with her for well over a year, we start to see just on the Power BI design side, we see tabs up here, page navigation, KPIs, couple line charts. Hopefully right away it pops, it's easy to see, right? Last 180 days, decreasing trend, looking good. Overall, pretty good. So that was that KPI card from earlier. This bottom graph, there's a smart scale that measured body composition as way of percent muscle mass and percent body fat. We start to see a nice scissoring or alligator jaws, if you will, of seeing, oh, over time, we lost weight, which was great. That was one outcome. But what was the body composition change? What we wanted to see. So we saw an increase in muscle mass and decreases in fat mass. And this was a nice kind of overall long-term case study that pulling up the data, putting it together like this, super easy to see, and the client loved this type of view. I don't know if anybody here has diabetes or has a family member. I'm sure we know somebody, but one phase of my client that was interested in walking to Mount Everest, he checked his blood glucose all the time. And so we actually had a phase of our program where we looked at what was his blood glucose level pre-walk and post-walk. And we started to see over time, his pre-blood glucose actually decreased over time. I'm not a hematologist, not an expert here on blood glucose monitoring, but we were able to just behaviorally speaking, look at the data he was already taking, and we can see the delta here of saying, oh, the change was less and less because the pre-reading was lower over time, indicating that he's getting his blood glucose under control and where he needed it to be. Another client sent over to see more of a dashboard view. She was interested in 2 targets of running, and she liked to do CrossFit. So again, we have those parameters set up of year, month, week, and day. Easy view on seeing total CrossFit days and runs. I think she wanted to start increasing her CrossFit days at the gym. And so we started working on those pieces. So again, just another example of how to start building, different metrics. I worked with her for over a year's time. So we have a year filter there. One client a while ago, we start to see different kind of phases here of she wanted to quit smoking. And the y-axis, the dependent variable here, is number of cigarettes smoked. So she was smoking a half a pack to a pack a day, essentially. And we started looking at these horizontal dotted lines, are just different goals that we had set of make sure we're smoking this many cigarettes here and so on down the line. When we set those goals, she started to meet those contingencies. I think she had a wild weekend here. She's sorry, I went to Vegas. But she still tracked her data, which was fun. But over time, you start to see, oh, we can use Power BI to track things like quitting smoking. And we start to see the shaded area. She self-imposed her own aversive contingencies of throwing the cigarettes out the window, or maybe not out the window, but just doing something aversive, something she didn't like if she didn't meet her goal. And we start to see that kind of relationship over time. Some things that I like to look at, you start to see small multiples and different things. I tracked my data in an app called Watify. You can export the data into a long spreadsheet. It took a while to learn how those data were structured, but you can start to see over years of working out and lifting, you can start to build things like PRs or max lifts by year across different movements. These are the things I like to do, and Power BI is well suited to do that. Here's one view. Here's another view I've played around with, again, with the addition of the improvements in the slicers and the KPI cards. We're able to start integrating just icons to make it easier, more attractive. And so I've experimented with clicking on, right, here's my back squat data, here's the volume, here's what I need to look on, and so forth. Hopefully this is painting the picture of just different targets between my own personal work with clients and things I like to do just for fun in the space. I've even used, I think this is a video. So once a year, there's an annual CrossFit competition in which everybody does a workout. And so Power BI, I made a scoreboard, and where you see filters by gender, division, pacing, very simple, but use case here, you can make a scoreboard out of a spreadsheet and people love it. When it comes to fitness calculators, I don't know how many other fitness nerds are in the space like I am. I always found it painful when trying to search for some type of pacing calculator. So then I started experimenting with just different ways to use Power BI with its native visuals, the core visuals, to say, okay, if I'm 42 years old, here's what zone I need to be in for this intensity. If I'm training at this level, that's for heart rate zone calculator, also for running pace calculator. Looking at the RPE, for those of us that are familiar with that's the rate of perceived exertion. So it's a subjective feeling of how difficult is this task. And so for running, a 10 would be a sprint. And for heart rate zone, you'd be at that 220 minus your age. That's just the math calculation. But I found with just doing the clinical work and my own research that there's really not a lot of tools that try to anchor mathematically the RPE to a certain multiplier and try to have it in a user-friendly way. So I've played around with just different creative things like that. Always experimenting with just things that are aesthetically pleasing, easy to use, and so forth. I think just in summary, these are my takeaways, and hopefully we can take something of value here away from this. But for me, Power BI, it's an incredibly flexible tool. Philosophically speaking, we can measure behavior outcomes, so many more things with individual visuals, buttons, parameter, right, values, groupings, the examples of the calculators at the end. There's a lot of variety of ways I like to use Power BI to help my clients solve whatever clinical problem they have. Super efficient. We all know this. I'm not selling Power BI. We're all sold on it. But the value for me, the emphasis here is that it allows me to really focus on my clinical work and decision making as opposed to just grinding through the spreadsheets or doing whatever else. And so I just love it for that. For me, I'm not using the fanciest DAX equations. I'm not using the most complicated data models. Again, with my work, it's got to be quick, fast, simple, easy, practical. I can design super quick in Power BI on the fly. Some for the clients that I've built up a relationship with, I might take a little extra time if they're okay with me, like building a DAX measure on the fly, but just a really simple, individualized model and measure system just works wonders. Most of the time, my clients, they're self-selected where they like this kind of objective approach and they love all the graphing and all the data collection. So it's a big, I think, win for Power BI. It just exposes more people to the tool. Many times folks will say, look, what tool is this? I'm like, well, it's not Excel, it's Power BI, it's a different thing. And still, to my surprise, like not many people have still heard about it other than those of us in the industry. Personal PSA, just the more you move, the better with the exercise things. And overall, got a minute to spare here. Really, I really appreciate the time here. Really, it's about the behavior change process. So if any of this allows you or a friend or a colleague to share an idea to analyze health data in a novel way that maybe you hadn't thought about before, then for me, that's the ripple effect. It's all worth it there. Really appreciate the time. You can stay connected with me. I think most of us follow each other on LinkedIn or whatever, but I'm all around. Feel free to connect with me, ask questions, whatever. And big thank you if you have your phone out. QR code me. That's all I had for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Nick. Lots,
Mhm.
lots of really cool stuff in there. What questions do you guys have?
Yeah, by all means, any questions now? Sure.
I think you mentioned it, but I was curious how you're sharing this data with your clients. Did you say you were screenshotting it?
Yeah, three ways. Usually on my live call with a client, I'll be a screen share. So I'll have the dashboard pulled up and we'll be going through it live. Sometimes if they can't make it or I need to give feedback on a specific target in between meetings, then I'll do a screenshot. And then the rare case, somebody wants to get access to the workspace, which requires a whole login, as we know. I've offered that a couple of times, but that's less common. But most of the time it's
Okay.
screen share and then maybe screenshots as needed.
Hey, this is Matthew Hall. So have you embedded this anywhere where it's a public website? Have you experimented with other ways to get this in front of your clients or customers?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So like that, the dashboard that I have over the scoreboard here, I actually embedded that on my website, on my BehaviorFit website. So then once I updated it, it was live in the gym, shared that way. Did you have another or different idea? I'd love to hear it.
Oh, no, there's lots of different ways for introducing the product when you're able to make some really cool KPIs or visualizations. Just there's a lot of different ways to run or share those with external clients. And I was just curious about that. And,
Oh,
for
sure.
instance,
Yeah. Yeah. Less so like on the individualized kind of client data that I shared here. I do some organizational consulting and I have set up like workspaces for external users to access that way. So gone that route with different things too.
Very cool. Have you priced out or scaled out any more web services or containers for hosting your data rather than the spreadsheets that you use? I know there's a lot of costs that's associated there.
Oh, yeah. So now this is where I am a clinician backing into the data, the data engineering world. So I know of the terms you just said me, but I've never set up databases or containers or blob storage. I've connected to things, I can connect to it, but I've never actually done that on the admin side of things. Right.
No worries. I love the resources that are free that you can grab, that you can set up. It's just, I always think if we get n number of clients, and we start scaling out. And then there's, once your database hits internet connection, you're paying for cost. And
Oh, sure. Yeah.
yes, it just sounds like it's not a need, but I'm always thinking, hey, how are we going to engineer this? How are we going to do bigger? So I don't know if you were exploring that or not.
Oh, yeah. I think the general thought crossed my mind with, like I've been coaching clients for what, 7, 8 years now that I've gone through. I've made 30 plus individual spreadsheets. So essentially I have 30 databases. I was like, oh, I wonder if I can somehow wrangle all of this with some type of AI agent or education and say, oh, now I'd like to know, like, how is Nick's coaching overall across many clients?
I'm just curious about that, infinitely curious. So I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I have noticed patterns in my own kind of work of, okay, I have the systems and sheets set up. I have that working, but now I take a step back and I'm always thinking about how can I be more efficient? And I think what I've discovered recently, like there's another layer to, right, learning about just basic database administration and things like that.
It's a different animal. This is an awesome presentation. Grabbing
Oh,
what
thank you.
do.
Yeah, I love all of the report design and fun creative aspect of kind of more the front end stuff. I try to learn enough to get myself the data, but you can go down any rabbit hole in this Power BI world, you know.
All right, thank you again.
Of course.
Calculators in particular were really cool.
Oh, I'm glad I threw them in at the last second.
Yeah, yeah, those are really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. We'll have the video available on our YouTube channel later this week. And Nick, we can connect on getting your slides, either if you want to post them to the meetup event, or we can make sure that those are out as well.
Sure. Yep.
We can make that happen. And we'll see you all next month with Jason for his talk on TMDL.
Thanks again, everybody. Yeah, feel free to connect with me and connect with you guys soon.
Sounds good. Great.
So,
Thank
yeah.
you all. Thanks for joining.